I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And we are back with another Q&A for you today.
We got some good questions, y'all.
Yeah?
Yes.
Very
we have
exciting.
Some ridiculously good questions. Thank y'all for sending in all your questions. You can send it in via
TikTok.
Well, TikTok,
or
yes.
Ghostmail.
If you don't have TikTok, you just shoot it over to our Ghostmail. I got a couple via Ghostmail, so.
Yep, so if you don't have TikTok, Ghostmail at Haunted City Podcast. That's the best place to send your questions. Otherwise, utilize the Q&A button on TikTok because that's where I go and find our questions. So absolutely.
Something we haven't talked about on the podcast for a while is our show.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think a lot of our newer listeners, we've gained listeners at a very frightening speed, actually. So I don't think they know about our show. So Madison, go ahead, tell them about what we do, like the bread and butter.
Sure. Yeah, we have a immersive horror show, if you will. It happens where we're filming right now at the Savannah Underground. And it's a completely 360-degree set, so you're on stage with the actors, bringing to life, three different Savannah ghost stories, essentially. So you go through a demonic possession, yellow fever, a boo hag, all the things. So
it happens every weekend of the year.
Yep, every weekend.
Except for like Christmas and stuff, obviously. It's a year-round thing, and we love doing it. And
it's
just
really
wanted
fun.
to let y'all know. And follow us on social media. It's the Savannah Underground on Instagram and the Savannah Underground on Facebook.
And
for sure.
Lots of fun stories come out of that show because we've been doing it for almost 2.5 years now, right? And so Chris actually doesn't know one of the best guests gone rogue stories that happened. So
You would hope there were good guest gone rogue stories and not terrible.
Well,
stories.
So most of our guests are absolutely delightful, and we've gotten to meet quite a few people who listen to the podcast from them coming to the show. But every once in a while, being Savannah, you get some people who come in very intoxicated. It's just going to happen, which is fine. But when we were at our old studio, or space, if you will, we had a different scene in the show. It was called The Plat Eye, which is another Gullah Geechee story. So the Plat Eye, at the end, you're supposed to defeat the Plat Eye with like blue lights and things like that. And one of the people got so into the story that they went up to the Plat Eye, took his giant, basically a weapon, because we had to be very cautious with it because it was supposed to be a plow that was handmade.
Right.
And it is so sharp. And he took the plow from the Plat Eye and chucked it across the theater and then proceeded to put the Plat Eye into citizen's arrest.
No.
And it was our Plat Eye's first night.
Do we have to train audience?
I know, right?
You need like you should start every show with okay, you are the audience.
Yeah.
You
Right.
get to participate, but you're still the audience.
Yeah.
Please do not change the course of the show.
It was
Seriously.
it was Corey who was playing the Plat Eye that evening. It was his first night playing the Plat Eye. And
And his last. He quit, and he is now a librarian.
Yeah.
right. He
actually moved far away.
he did. He moved to Atlanta.
Oh, there you go.
But
Patrick had to
and Patrick literally had to tell the guests, you cannot put the Plat Eye under citizen's arrest. That's not how we defeat the Plat Eye. It's so.
Oh, goodness.
We have
gracious.
delightful stories like that. And also the ghosts gone rogue in the theater also like to mess with the actors pretty often. We have a couple spirits that are particularly active in here. And one of them we call the toe tickler because in the Annabelle scene, the girls who are playing Annabelle have all reported the same thing where they feel a hand with a finger going down their feet.
Nope.
And one of our
Nope.
our actors, she requested a blanket to put over her feet because she's like, I don't like it. She's like,
who would?
So there's that. The rocking chair.
I don't like humans touching my feet. I
Well,
don't want a ghost touching my feet.
Well, that's what we thought. We were like, did a customer touch
yeah,
your
sure.
feet? And because that has happened before. Like I said, Gus gone rogue. But
Audience, do not touch the actors.
don't touch the actor's feet.
No.
And they're like, no one was there. It was just the weirdest thing. Yeah, so there's that. The rocking chair I'm sitting in right now, it just goes wild.
She's in a rocking chair. You didn't realize.
Yes, I like the movement. It's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, during the show last Saturday, it just went wild at the top of the show. It was just going beep 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 beep. And
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh,
We
man.
need
I
to
should
set
be
up the
able to-
cameras, man. Set up the cameras.
They are.
They
They're
are.
on.
It's
then
recorded.
I need to go
record.
get them. I know. Maybe I'll put it on Patreon.
We need
let me
to
get all
put-
the stuff and put it on Patreon.
We
Yeah.
need to put a live stream of the cameras in the space so
Yeah.
people can ghost hunt whenever they like.
It's true.
If they
It's true. You've been saying
are
it for a
patrons.
while.
I've been
It's
saying
true.
it for a while.
I know.
I think
know.
we should approach other haunted locations with the idea of
Yeah.
creating a subscription service so that we can just set up some cameras.
I love the idea.
And then just you the listeners at home can tune in at 3:00 in the morning and watch an empty hallway for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Alrighty, y'all. So, let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. We're doing a Q&A today. Whoop, whoop. Woo woo. Q&A Tuesday.
Woo.
All right. And let's get started with the first question. This is the Bry Guy was here, but it's like was here. My sis loves your show and has recently got me hooked. I've listened to many episodes and you've talked about so much, but I haven't heard much about the square formerly known as Calhoun Square.
Sure.
My sis said she took a tour when visiting from Michigan last summer, and it's one of the most haunted squares. What ghost stories come from there?
Excellent. Well, we actually have a whole episode devoted to 432. So if you go digging for that, and 432 has a very complicated story behind it. The square itself was the old Negro burial grounds. That's what it was called, the old Negro burial grounds, and they actually moved the bodies. Purportedly, they moved the bodies.
Right.
However, I want to say as recent as 1994, they found remains in that square due to extensive flooding at the time. But so there are countless stories that you can go to. But there's also the Espy House for anybody who is familiar at all with the Espy House story. The Espy House, named after the judge Carl Espy, his son was brutally murdered by gangsters, by the Hars brothers. They were bootleggers at the time. And they left his body on the doorstep. And according to legend, when this occurred, Carl Espy didn't call the police or the hospital, didn't take his son. He brought his son into the house, and his son died from the injuries inside the house because, again, this is according to legend, Carl Espy was afraid of being investigated himself because apparently he was a rival bootlegger. According, again, we go through all these legends and these stories, but Carl Espy was a very harsh judge of the period, and his son Wesley Espy was targeted. And I think the story itself is told in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It was like reported to John Barrett, and John Barrett put it into the book. So if you read the book, you'll know the story. It's more gruesome than I'm letting on because the podcast is family friendly, and this is not a family friendly death.
No, it is not. So
It is not?
No.
That's okay. Gore's allowed. Let's do it.
Nobody involves in castration, so
Yeah.
we will
Yeah.
stop. We will stop at that.
Okay.
Yeah. But other than that, it's just mostly what I've heard of with the square, very residual type energy. Anytime you have a burial ground, you're going to get...
And one that gets so maligned because the treatment of the people who were buried there in their life was so harsh. I remember one account saying that, when slaves died, they were not given like time off to mourn. They were not given, it was like literally you have X amount of time, get the body out there, bury it, and get back. No pomp and circumstance, no even treatment. So it's not like they were given the opportunity to truly honor their dead the way that they would choose to.
And it's also important to note that that square was not a part of the original confines of Savannah. So that would have been way off in the outskirts, technically.
Right.
So,
if you're familiar with Savannah, 2 blocks north of that is the south end of the Colonial Park Cemetery, and the Colonial Park Cemetery was considered to be the border, the last border, because there was a cemetery there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of wilderness past that. So that's why the cemetery itself got dismantled, was because people were like, oh, it's real estate.
Okay.
And that's the truth of a lot of Savannah. Even Colonial Park Cemetery was actually much larger and technically still is. They believe that there are bodies that go up under Abercorn Street, come out as far as Liberty Street, because when they realized, and this was, I guess when cotton became king, people were becoming rich and wanting to live in the city. They'd have their plantations out in the, outskirts, but they'd have these almost palatial houses in the city, and they started to expand past that wall.
right.
Because there's also a walled-in city. People don't realize that Savannah used to be walled in as like almost a fortress.
So why? We have a lot of listeners that are not from Savannah, actually, like the majority of them. And they might not know why he said formerly known as Calhoun Square.
Oh,
It's
sure.
actually the unnamed square right now.
Right, we're going through the process of choosing a new name.
But yeah, tell them why.
Well, basically, Calhoun, who was named after it, was a South Carolinian.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is his first offense.
Yes.
Is that he's not. He's not even a Savannian. He's not.
He doesn't even go
he
here.
He doesn't even go here. But famously, he was very, very pro-slavery. He was very, very key in splitting this country apart. He was very, very key in creating such a terrible animosity towards the black community, towards having his name on something. And this is the truth of so many things all around. Is we've come to a point where honoring history comes face to face with recognizing history, with being able to state, you know what, this is probably not the proper name for this square.
Yeah.
And it was actually the neighborhood itself. The people who lived there were a part of the spearhead effort to change the name. So, it's not one of those things, because it's not some historic thing. It is a missed opportunities, because there are many, many wonderful Savannians, many, many people who did hard and important work to the betterment of Savannah and the nation as a whole.
Yep.
That could certainly be honored with the name of Square.
The current front runner at the moment is Susie King Taylor.
For sure.
Who was, I believe, one of the first black nurses in the military. And then also she was one of the spearheads of black education in Savannah and Georgia in general. She would be a really good choice, especially because the Massey School is right there, which was the first school to integrate black and white students.
Right, and to offer a
public
good
education.
public education to
It's ironic
black
that
students.
would be the square that's in front of that's
right.
The Massey
Well, and that was
School's
people who attended the Massey School and talk about it do say that like going to the school, they would hear whispering, they would hear sensations, and keep in mind that this was probably direct ancestors of people who were buried on that property, were going to school there as children, and a lot of people think that there was not scary stories, just this concept of presence and this concept of there being a spiritual component to it.
Yep. So we ain't got no time for racists around here in Savannah. We'll beat you up if you come here and you're racist. All right, here we go.
A drop of blue and a sea of red.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
So, next question is Lainey Hart. It's my sister's name, but not Hart, but Lainey. I've heard you say many times to be wary of entities that try to tell you the future. What is your take on Nostradamus and his predictions? I love Nostradamus.
Nostradamus is a great example.
Ooh, it's so fun.
So, this is where we get into a weird category,
right?
Which is called prophets. The difference between a prophet and an entity trying to tell you the future. Prophets are burdened with a vision of the future, and their purpose is to be this crack of light that shines through and gives us some awareness, and that is why throughout biblical tellings, throughout almost every religion on earth, there are certain people ordained or touched to guide us, and their knowledge of the future is about the knowledge of, quote unquote, the plan. So when you deal with a prophet, you're 9 times out of 10 dealing with a person who's not trying to tell you what to do, but trying to outline check marks to the plan, to the road that we are on. And that gives credence to a lot of the prophet stories, because the prophets of the Bible and the prophets, handpicked by a deity to know the future, the oracles, these sources. The problem is, and as the story that I was introduced to was this idea, and it's framed in a Christian light, because that's how the story is told, but it's amenable to almost any faith process. The concept is there was a singular deity or singular designer, and the singular designer made a plan. And he shared that plan they shared that plan, I should say, with like beings. We call them angels. So God says to the angels, look at this plan. Mm-hmm. And they say, that is good. That's actually in Genesis, God said, let there be light, and there was light, and someone said that was good. Someone was like, great, good plan, like the light. So the idea was that there was a plan for the universe, and God shared it with his angels. What happened next was a revolution, a war, and that war broke the factions, 1/3 of the host, the demons, as we call them. They're all fallen angels. They saw the plan. They know the future. The trick is, a prophet tells you the future without any exchange. Ooh. A demon tells you the future in exchange for something. They take something for the knowledge that they give. And that becomes one of those things is, are you reading signs of the future, or are you being told the future? For instance, people who use tarot, they'll put the tarot, and there will be a path of the future. They're using signs. They're using indicators. They're seeing a probability of future. They're seeing a path that's being cut and a plan, because the cards are telling her that. But if you're dealing with, like, say, a Ouija board, who is telling you, you'll write a book, this will be famous, you'll be rich, things like that, they are enticing you. They're trying to get you to give them something in return for the knowledge. So it's a tricky thing, but I believe that Nostradamus was a prophet. I believe that he was gifted with a sight of the future, or a glimpse of the plan, and he felt compelled to write it. And one of the most interesting things I'd ever read was the idea that Nostradamus was a biblical a biblical prophet, and it was believed that he was Jewish, but hid his heritage because it was not always easy. Certainly, still not always easy to be Jewish in society, and so by doing that, he obscured the idea that he was a part of a lineage of biblical I keep saying pirates. Prophets.
Biblical pirates.
I like biblical pirates. Biblical prophets.
No, I completely agree, though. It's it is a tricky line because prophets are not necessarily the same as people who have prophetic dreams.
Right.
There is also a difference between that because prophetic dreams sometimes are, still just a glimpse of what could happen. Prophets tend to know things a little bit more definitively,
like
if you
the three
will.
antichrists,
Right?
like Napoleon, Hister, and then the third antichrist is coming. That's what he said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the blue turban.
Yeah,
right.
Everyone's gonna love him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna
Just
destroy.
ruin things.
Yeah, that's how we knew it wasn't Trump. All right.
But yes.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But yeah,
We're done.
so basically, though, I was going to say that, it's interesting when you watch or you look through Nostradamus's predictions and still see that there are some human interpretations.
Oh, yeah.
So Hister, which is believed to be Hitler, he didn't get the name exactly. It's still kind of iffy because anytime you are dealing with something that is outside of what humans can grasp, you're not going to get exactly 100% definitive.
Yeah.
And that's important to note as well. But it is quite compelling and interesting. And if
For sure.
Hister
And there's no prescription for action.
Right.
Is the other thing. It is not avoid this or do this. I want to say there was a TV show that suggested, it was like an action adventure show where they're trying to save people by, decoding Nostradamus' writings. As it's more of a prehistory of looking out. Because the idea of prophetic dreams, one of the images I always liked of that was like certain life events. You throw a rock into a stream and then there's ripples. Well, the ripples are going in all directions, to include the past. So that ripple, you might just hit the ripple of an event. And that gives you some indication of what that event is. And the more traumatic and the more intense the event is, the stronger that ripple is, the stronger the current that comes off of the event. And some people are just very sensitive to the ripples. Mm-hmm. Some people, a ripple is coming up because time is a construct. We made it up. And there's a good chance that we are imprisoned by our concept of time. Wow. And we could conceivably undo that concept if we really tried. But that would probably undo all reality. So don't try.
That's true.
All right.
Yeah.
Heard that in the grease. Okay, here we go. Bring Bleach 88 asks, because of it being the main decayer of corpses, does moss and or fungi have anything to do with the paranormal?
So good. What a good question.
That is a really good question. It's tricky because everything does have its own energy and it has its own purpose, but I don't necessarily consider it paranormal per se. Now, when you get into the science of mushrooms, it gets very complicated and they are so interconnected and so intelligent in their own weird facet because they're able to communicate with each other through this whole interconnective design of sorts. But just because they are the consumers of the dead does not mean that they are haunted mushrooms. It's
So this is fun. There is a prevailing concept that fungi, moss, anything that naturally pulls from the dead, are actually absorbing the paranormal properties. They're actually keeping it from getting out of control. Their responsibility is to take in and give purpose to some of that energy. When humans started embalming people, ghosts became more and more an issue because no longer are is there something feeding off of the paranormal energy? No longer are things feeding off of the body. You know, for some reason we hermetically seal bodies and we fill them with chemicals so that they'll retain their properties. And so the question is, circle of life question is, was there a spiritual element to nature? Mm-hmm. Does nature not just feed off of the organic, but could it feed off of the paranormal or supernatural or spiritual aspects of the body, allowing for the circle of life, allowing for, are we cutting ourselves off from the natural world?
Sure.
And is that part of the chaos that is happening in our world? Is that part of the decay of our planet? Is that we stepped out of the cycle. We stepped out of the circle. We decided that we didn't want to become, food for the
mushrooms.
For the mushrooms.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what if that was one of the purposes of our life? What if that's what gave us access to heaven? What if heaven is just becoming a part of the environment, of becoming green grass and mushrooms interwoven in a beautiful, because it's true, mushrooms show incredible intelligence.
Yeah.
They share a lot of knowledge about what's good, what's bad, where they can go, how they can grow. So I do think it's interesting. It's a great question. What a good question. But I just recently saw the put your body in a tree.
Yeah.
Back.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
That is what I
be a
would like.
tree.
I want to feed something with my body.
Yeah.
I don't want to just sit in a box. Could you imagine, if you will, all the people since we started embalming, all the people are still in those boxes.
Yeah.
Waiting for ascension, waiting to go to the next place, but they can't because they're full of chemicals and plants aren't going to eat them, and they're just going to decay and rot in a very safe. Because now I think that like our coffins are like steel and
those things are
airtight. And it's like, what have we done?
True.
Dead people don't need pillows.
That's funny.
We don't need cushions.
Dead people don't need pillows.
I don't know what to do with this, with the idea that we put all of this hard. We put a lot of money into the weird rituals that we've come up with.
I feel like that's for the families, though.
Funerals, for graveyards,
not even the funeral. Like just to know that they're in a comfortable. Their corpses are in a comfortable position, and they're not like in an L shape or something.
Well,
but we need to normalize the fact
that
that death is beyond discomfort. We need to normalize the idea that I would rather be dropped off in the middle of the woods than pumped full of chemicals and put in a sealed box.
Fun fact about Madison and I actually is we did a tree planting ceremony at our wedding, and that tree was planted in the same place that we are going to be buried at our mountain house. Mm-hmm. So that's technically going to feed our marriage tree.
There has to be a way to avoid the formaldehyde. There has to be a way to avoid the embalming process, because embalming is why? I mean, I know why, but it's not necessary anymore.
I'm sure you could sign a waiver and say, "Don't do anything to me. Just bury me as quickly as possible."
But for a while, it was law.
A waiver? Yeah. No, that's in your will.
But there was a law that you couldn't do that. There was a law stating that everybody had to be embalmed.
Was it like a Georgia or federal?
No, it was law of the land.
Oh, dang.
If any funeral directors are listening to this, or Funeral Babe on TikTok, I will at her. Let us know.
Funeral Babe?
Yes, she's so cool. She's a funeral director, I want to say up in Massachusetts or somewhere up north.
Funeral Babe.
She's dope. She literally goes through all the process of because as a mortician, what they do and all that. It's very fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anybody knows the legalities of that, let us know.
Yeah. How do you avoid it? What do you do? How does it come down to it?
But on the topic of mushrooms, though, moss in general, they do have, if you're looking on the metaphysical side of things, they are protective agents. Spanish moss,
definitely.
Specifically, which we have a ton of here in Savannah, that is a protective plant, if you will. It protects you from the sun, but also metaphysically, it protects you from negative entities and things like that, which is interesting for Savannah in general.
Well, there's there are stories about Spanish moss will not grow where innocent blood has been shed.
Right.
Those kinds of stories abound because there's always looking for an explanation of why one tree can be laden with Spanish moss and the next tree over, nothing. And one of the more interesting ones was iron. That they were like, if there's a lot of iron in the tree, then the iron comes from the blood of people. If their blood has been spilled, the tree was soaking up iron. I don't know, but it is interesting because that question is about nature,
right?
And how we kind of ran afoul of nature and are running afoul of nature. So I would like to believe that anything that feeds off of death is renewing the dead thing, is giving the dead thing life, is allowing it to have life.
Yeah. So there you go.
For sure.
That's a fun question.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. Oh, you sold some earrings, hon.
Nice.
Just got the Venmo. Yeah. Just as I want to just add to that is like, just as the resident Christian at the table, I've always seen fungus and just, mushrooms in general as like God's ultimate tool of destruction. It's like you I don't know. It's like, it just eats and destroys everything and returns it to the earth.
Yeah.
And so,
it's weird they use the word destruction.
Yeah.
Because it's not destruction. The destruction was done. The body is dead. It's if you think of it in that Christian sense, it's the promise of everlasting life.
Oh yeah.
Because life comes from death. Life from death. Life from death is a big concept.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, is there any proof? Well, of course there is. Mushrooms. Well, of course there is. Look at what grows when somebody dies, and maybe that's an allegory for your soul.
Yeah.
When you die, your soul could conceivably.
I've always seen. I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I've always seen nature as like proof that God exists.
Right. It's as fitting a love letter as it is, and
it is.
And humans just tear that letter up and crumple it up and
right.
Yeah. We do.
And then litter with it.
And then for you witches out there, because I know there's quite a few of you who listen to this, use Japanese moss balls as a ward. I'm not going to tell you further about my own personal use of that because I'm just in case any of you are trying to break down my wards. But, well, I don't know who listens to this.
Do you have a nemesis out there?
I don't know. TikTok, there's some people on TikTok who don't like us very much.
I want to say that TikTok is just a nemesis engine.
Yeah. And so
building nemesis.
So I personally use them, and they're so interesting, and they're a fantastic home protection ward. And then also in Japan,
are those the ones you're giving to Kiwan's kids?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've decided more so because I have 3 of them. One will go to each of the firstborn children of our siblings. So
okay. So Kiwan,
Lainey, and Marissa will all each get a moss ball. So
excellent.
Because that's traditionally what you're supposed to do with them in Japanese culture is to hand them down through the generations.
Madison and her moss balls.
They're great. They're excellent. So if you're a witch, go to your local plant shop and request moss balls.
Cool.
Excellent.
Alrighty, let's move on. Dark Soul Soup _S asks.
Chegou a melhor parte do podcast. É hora de provar a melhor Coca-Cola. A Coca-Cola sem açúcar. O sabor irresistível da Coca-Cola, sem açúcar e igualmente refrescante. Coca-Cola sem açúcar. A melhor escolha.
I live in Canada, right outside of Kamloops. Yes, the place where the massacre of thousands of Indigenous students and people took place. I believe my house might be haunted by a few of the students. I'm not 100% sure, but I just get this energy that they're... Oh, it's longer than... Hold on. I just get this energy that they're there. Weird things happen in the house, like we'll come out of our rooms in the morning to find the fridge wide open. We don't have any pets, and I once saw a little native boy in my backyard at night. It was terrifying, but I didn't call the police because somehow I knew he was dead. Anyway, my question is, how could I rid my house of a spirit or spirits that I feel have more of a right to be here than I do? I want them gone because I'm super afraid, but I feel like wanting them gone is wrong because that was the issue in the first place.
That is a very tricky proposition because
really
I
is.
think you really hit it right there at the end. Driving spirits away when it's a place they belong, or driving spirits away who have been driven to wherever they are. The question really is, what are they presenting for? Why do you see them? Why are they present? What purpose are they doing? If not to raise awareness, if it's not just you learning the history and nature of the place you're living, but as far as dealing with indigenous spirits, usually you should consult an indigenous person, because every group, every tribe, every nation will have their own customs and their own ideas, and there might be some blanket stuff going on, but for the most part, belief structures are built within the growth of any group of individuals. So you might need to discuss that with some indigenous people if you have access to them.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I mean, now the biggest thing is I find when you're dealing with, now this is at least coming from my own personal experience, where I grew up, I had the spirits that were in my house were indigenous. And I find that it's best, I get that you're scared by them, but it's best to learn how to coexist.
Yes.
Because it doesn't sound like they are trying to do anything to purposely scare you. So it's more so you just kind of have to work past that initial fear and just accept that they are there.
But sometimes, and I think, Chris, you'd agree with this, sometimes fear you just can't get over.
It's true.
Even if I don't care how many tarantulas you make me hold, I'm going to be afraid of them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you
It's
can't,
just like-
you
it's
can't
like that.
expel. It's not a tarantula, though.
No.
It's
I'm
like
just giving you an example. I never said it was a tarantula.
No,
I'm
I
saying,
know.
yeah. I'm saying that it's not just like I can try to get over this fear. I'm arachnophobic. I don't like freaking spiders.
But my point being is that you can't tell an indigenous spirit that is of that land.
Yeah.
You cannot tell it to go away.
Perfect. Then
it's-
move. That would be the best thing.
So
If you're-
ideally, if it's bothering you that much, the answer is always move. But to Madison's point, you might find it helpful to talk, to speak aloud, both your concerns, your intentions, what you're feeling. Say it aloud. Give it form, give it structure. A lot of people worry about like a language barrier or things like that. We're not really speaking words. We are speaking intent and sensations and feelings. So reach out and try to make peace with the notion that this is how it is. You can normalize your encounters, and that's not necessarily the same as overcoming your fears, but by normalizing them, you have a structure, a way to deal with it. Something scary is happening, talk, speak aloud. Don't tighten and become so defensive, because that defensive stance will come back to you.
Yeah, it's in there. I don't know. No, I completely agree with all that. I think move. That would be my. Well, okay.
It's not always
Like if you
feasible,
take
though.
it back to the spiders, Madison. If our house suddenly became infested with spiders, we couldn't get rid of them. We're moving.
And that's usually it's funny because when I do investigations or I talk to anybody, I will gauge how haunted a place is by that response.
Yeah.
It's like if they moved away, then I immediately put it higher on the list
Yeah.
of probable haunts, because some people can handle it. Some people can take it. And sometimes the haunting is at the level of doubt.
Yeah.
People will tell you the scariest ghost stories. It's like, why are you still there? It's because they have enough doubt to weather the strangeness.
Right.
They have enough doubt to suggest that there's still some part of them that's feeding the idea of the haunt, and then and they manage. So lots of people live in haunted houses who are very afraid of the ghosts, but they kind of hold on either to the doubt or they make a certain type of peace.
Yeah.
So if you can't manage that, I strongly suggest speaking to indigenous peoples because I
think that's a great idea.
At the very least, you'll get some great insight.
Right.
Even if it doesn't help you at all with your current situation, I think it could give you such a wonderful experience. Maybe you're being prompted in life to learn more about things outside your scope.
And just to clarify, I'm not saying entities are spiders. I'm saying that. I just want to clarify. I'm not saying entities are spiders. I'm saying that it's just about the fear. That's all I'm trying to say is that the fear is, if you have a fear of something, you cannot or shouldn't get rid of the what you're afraid of, then the best thing to do is retreat.
And now it's time for me to tell a story about ghost spiders.
Oh,
ghost spiders.
Stop it.
I'm kidding.
Okay. I'm like...
JC would die.
I would.
Yeah.
Wicked good question. Let's see. Okay. Leaves with like 3 3s in it. Asks, Chris, I love hearing about your childhood, LOL. What's a story you haven't told us yet?
Oh, good Lord.
You tell us a lot about your childhood.
There's so many stories.
Like half of our listeners came from your childhood story.
Your childhood trauma.
Gosh, and the problem is, like, summoning stories is harder than like hearing something that spawns. Oh, I know. I had an experience like that because there are many stories. When I lived in Germany, we went hiking in the Black Forest. And this is interesting because I always assumed it was the Black Forest. There's a chance it wasn't. I just, when people were talking about it, it's like, because we used to do these things called Wandertags, Volksmarches. And that was like every weekend we'd go on these 10-kilometer, 20-kilometer walks. And we get these little medals. And I love those medals. I used to have medals all over my jacket. Loved Volksmarch. Wandertags. And so one time we were in a very creepy woods. And so I always assumed it was the Black Forest, but I was little. So it was like, unless it was like clearly stated that it was the Black Forest, it might not have been the Black Forest. But years later, people talk about the Black Forest. I was like, oh yeah, I know that place. I've been in a scary forest in Germany. I know what that's all about. So I'm walking through this forest, and we're not walking through the forest. It's a path, and we're Volksmarching. I had I was wearing lederhosen. How hilarious is that?
That's super hilarious.
Little Korean boy in lederhosen with a little hat with a feather in it, and I'm walking, and we encounter there's a buzzing of people gathered just into the woods, and they're people who are on the hike had pulled off, and we go out to see what it is, and even getting close to it, my dad was like, maybe hold back. Sure. Yeah, we're not sure what we're about to come up on, because the general sound was tragedy. Oh, like we're coming up on something tragic. Okay, and we're getting closer and closer, and a buzz of German conversation going on, and I am looking through the legs of the adults. Okay, and I can see clearly on the ground like a post with a rope, and the rope goes to, I'm guessing it was a sheep leg, but it was definitely the leg of an animal that was tied to the post. And it was just gone. Whoa. Not sure what any of that was. We didn't know, was it a trap for a wolf maybe? Was it, there was nothing, but, I was quickly diverted from it. But for years after that, I would occasionally get these dreams of being in that forest and being among a bunch of cloaked individuals, and them killing a lamb. And that was before I really even knew that was a thing. However, media at the time was so bizarre that I could have easily seen something on TV.
Sure.
I could have easily, I used to go to the movies all the time on my own from the time I was like 6 on. They used to show movies at the Post Theater back to back to back. And these were old movies, and they were a hodgepodge of movies, and they didn't make any sense. And I could have easily seen something that led to that. But I do remember thinking that we had stumbled upon a ritualistic sacrifice site. Whether that's true or not, I do not know. But I do remember it distinctly, and I do have deep, dark feelings about that area and that time.
Okay.
Well,
all right. Well, there you go. Leaves hopes that
the latest installment of you want to hear how messed up my childhood was?
There you go. Yeah, we should do like an installment. All right.
Messed up childhood.
Yes. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. Julie sent this in via Ghostmail, and she asked, I recently lost my dog who was with us for 15 years. I would like to know what happens to them after death. Does their soul stay here with us?
I don't know if you've heard my stories. Has it been a year and a half? My dog Ranger passed, and I still, to this day, hear his clipping, see the corner of my eyes, like his tail, because he was a white dog, so very distinct. And there are obviously times when I'm absolutely certain that it's just that regularity, the expectancy of seeing and hearing the dog. We recently started fostering a new dog, and I have distinct moments of because the new dog will freeze and just stare.
Yeah.
And this dog is not a dog-friendly dog. It doesn't like other dogs. So it gets into that stare moment in places where I've oftentimes felt or thought I've seen Ranger. So when I see that happen, I'm like, are you seeing Ranger? Is that what's happening? Is Ranger still, around? I firmly believe that our pets, when they pass, the connection, the connectivity, the love, allows for at least a portion of their existence to remain with us until we are ready to let them go. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I believe, all animals get a free pass. They get to go on. If anything, living as a human is probably the toil of existence, and hopefully we'll come back as a dog. Hopefully we'll come back with the leisure of pet and of animals that are pampered and taken care of. So hopefully, the concept of all dogs go to heaven lives in my heart. I believe it, and so I don't have an answer that is definitive, but that is what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge exactly what happens with animals, but I will say that animals tend to leave behind residual hauntings a lot. Actually, I think we picked up a ghost dog of some form, because recently, within the past 2 months.
Of course you did, honey.
I know. I'm telling you, I think.
I forgot to do this.
Meow, 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 meow.
All right. We're gonna next ghost mail is gonna be real nasty.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, but yeah, so I think we picked up actually a ghost dog, because for the past 2 months or so, I have been seeing this little blonde dog that is not Argyle, because I keep thinking it's Argyle. And so I'll see a little blonde dog run out of the corner of my eye while I'm in the kitchen, or I'm out back with our dogs or something, and I'll think that it's Argyle running by me, and then when I look, she'll be laying on the couch in the living room, or she'll be in the bedroom, or she won't be anywhere near me. And so I think that a ghost dog of Savannah has decided to come live with us in our zoo. But
there you go.
You know,
that's interesting. I once had a friend. His name was also Chris. And I'm trying to remember this story that he told me. It was a while ago. I was 13, 14 when he told me this, but he said that he recently went to see his grandfather for the last time. And I don't think I've ever told you this, Maddie, but when his grandfather was in hospice, they came to visit him and all of that stuff, and he wouldn't stop moving his hand like this. Oh. And then he died later that night. I think, it was later that night or early next morning, but he wouldn't stop moving his hand, and they thought it was like like some type of medical thing, where it's like a muscle spasm or something like that. But he actually lost his dog like a couple years before, and so Chris and his family, they thought that his dog was like coming back and like welcoming him into the afterlife.
That's Absolutely. Such a cute story. You're like, Argyle, you better do that.
Argyle is going to be on. I've said this before. She's going to drop a ghost tennis ball on my face, and she's going to be like, throw it. I'm going to be like, I'm dying, and she's going to be like, I don't care.
Well, then get out of that body and grab the ball.
Exactly.
She's like, we have all of eternity.
Yes,
I can wait.
We do. I can wait. It's true. That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah.
JT will require Argyle to escort him into the afterlife.
That's true. That's my baby girl. That's my baby girl. All right. This is the last question. It's been a great episode. Great questions. Thank y'all for really sending them in. Wow. All righty. So the last one is from Ultra Parajunkie, Ashley Werner.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a feeling it's about Jameson, the other Ultra Parajunkie. And she asked, how old do y'all think a kid should be to start ghost hunting?
Well, I mean, you can put an age on it if you want, but if the kid wants to ghost hunt, they're gonna ghost hunt. And knowing Jameson is a good kid. He's gonna listen to his mom. But if he's anything like how I was when I was a kid, I was just doing it on my own, whether people knew that they were knew that that's what I was doing. I was doing candle magic in my bedroom so badly because I was trying to figure out how many ghosts were in my room. And so I was doing candle magic to get them to communicate with me. Don't do that, Jameson.
Yeah, I was about to say, you have the beautiful luxury of walking with the child.
Yes.
Take their hand, help them through it, because I started pretty much when I was 6 years old. I was breaking into buildings. I was going into abandoned houses. I was running off into scary woods. I was doing anytime anybody's like, "Oh, that place is haunted," I found myself going there. Ill-advised, reckless youth. Be aware that you have an opportunity to do some good training, to teach how to be careful, to teach how not to see every weird thing and touch it or poke it or break through. I mean, it wasn't until I was in my 20s before I started being more responsible with how I ghost hunted, because I was just, there's a ghost story, let's go. There's a ghost story, let's go. Let's climb this wall. Let's go in this house. Let's break through the window. Let's do this. Don't do that. We did not have as much media when I was doing this. There was not a ghost hunter show or 50. There was not, a section in the bookstore that was full of how to ghost hunt, where you can, get your ghost hunting logs that you can print out. There wasn't the internet. So just be mindful, and any age is good as long as you are present with them.
Right.
Because otherwise, and I'm a perfect example of a lot of my ghost tendencies and my ghost beliefs had to be amended and reconstructed because my imagination was the only thing I had to go by. I was filling in blanks the whole time. I didn't have a lot of resources, and I didn't have other people that I really talked to. And when I did, they were my same age, so we were all just sitting in the dark screaming. So you can be a great guide for a child who's interested.
Yeah, I was the kid that was leading seances at the slumber parties. It would start out with light as a feather, stiff as a board, all that, and then it turned into like a full blown seance. So don't. It's good that Jameson listens to this so he can learn from
learn from our mistakes.
Yeah,
the many demons that I keep trapped in my brain were the result of stupid things. Well,
and I was unfortunately so entranced with all the TV shows that were just then coming out, and they were all so ridiculous that they didn't teach you that maybe you shouldn't scream at a ghost. Maybe you shouldn't,
Well, the fascinating thing about, and something to keep in mind about a lot of the ghost television shows, is that they always come from a point of view of trying to bring it to the ground, bring it to earth. They're trying to make it scientific, and they're trying to make it something that would convince a cynic, because many of them are, former cynics. They encountered something that challenged their beliefs. When you have a person who is more concerned with proof than with experience and learning, then you're going to get a very specific brand of information, and that information is oftentimes about how mechanical ghost hunting can be. Exactly.
So there you go. I guess moral of this episode is don't do seances in your slumber parties. And
it's not going to stop anyone. That is not going to stop anyone.
That's true. And ghost dogs.
Ghost dogs are sweet.
They're very good. So, but thank you guys so much for listening. If you have a question that you would like to send to us, go ahead and utilize the Q&A button on TikTok, or if you don't have TikTok, you can utilize our email, which is ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com, and just put question in the subject so that we can distinguish it from regular ghost mail. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And stay spooky, y'all.